how have you seen those overlap, I guess, in Peruvian literature?
Well, I think that specifically you're talking about Jose Maria Arguedas, who was, I think we spoke about this in our class, who was he was a very unusual writer because his first experience was Quechua. So his first language was Quechua, and which is not the case to start with. So he tries to transpose the Quechua language, which, by the way, doesn't have, now in later years it's been they have been trying to formalize a writing, but, traditionally it's not a written language.
Right.
Into a form that is either the novel or the short story, which is a Western, it's a Occidental, it's a sort of a Western culture means, and a written language. So Arguedas had a lot of, he thought a lot about this, because first he wrote his stories in, Spanish, and in very good Spanish, but he felt that they didn't have a soul. That, and again, we're going back to the expressiveness of Quechua, which is an incredibly expressive language. So what he did was that he incorporated Quechua in Spanish writing, and he worked with a syntax of Spanish and made it Quechua-like, and just to give sort of try to give the emoción,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have you come across any other authors that have?
Yeah, there are many.
And I guess he's unique because he, as you said, learned Quechua first. Are there others that have, are learned Spanish first and then tried to go back and try to capture?
Yes, there are several. And some of them are quite good. They're not as from the inside, and that's why as Arguedas. But some of them, like Ciro Alegría, or there's Zabaleta, they are good. But they don't, and the ones that are not good are the ones that try to imitate.
Right.
Exactly. And it's like a bad imitation.
Yeah.
But what happens with Arguedas is that Arguedas it's not only the writing and the form of the writing and the lexicon and so forth, but it's also the cosmovisión, the vision that is,
Okay.
He's the closest.
Okay. So then I guess you come back to the expressiveness of Quechua and emotional part of the language. How do you think, I guess this could be broader too, a language forms and shapes a person's identity?
How does a language well,
which is hard, because we can see with Arguedas how his identity was different because he grew up learning Quechua, and by that he grew up with indigenas.
How does a language shape identity, or identity shapes a language?
Exactly.
I don't know, and I think about this, and I don't know what's the response. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
But certainly the language is the most, it's the most obvious representation of us. And I'm speaking of in a national level. It's the most obvious superficial representation of people's beliefs, and for example, I'm always surprised when I go to Peru at the amount of either sort of sexist words that exist, that wouldn't, that in this country don't exist.
Exactly.
And, that seems to me like a very obvious sign of the sexism, machismo, that exists in the, just to give you, but of course, like racial comments that not necessarily, people don't perceive it as racist.
Definitely.
But they are, in fact, racist. So there's a lot of that. So, but I don't know if, I think that I don't know if language, I don't know how it is. It's